starting with the second day with the panel, and everyone's here already. That's going to be fully online. And so I don't know if you want to say anything. No. So yeah, have a great conference. Going to start now, and thank you for coming.
Hello.
Hi.
This session is about, I've learned it on YouTube, pedagogy and music education in the digital age. And I would like to compliment everybody and present Cláudia Sousa, that she has a master in music teaching from University of Aveiro, and she's a member of the music iconography of the our CESEM unit of investigation, and a listening a day keeps the doctor away. YouTube inside music history classroom. Sorry, but I have some work up there, and this I will try not to be brief. So, Claudia Sousa, the stage is yours.
Thank you, João. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I'm not in Lisbon. I would like to be there, but as you know, I'm teaching, so I'm in Abrantes right now. And so let's start. I would like to thank, of course, the organization for this amazing conference and for all of you for listening to me today. So I'll try to just, oh, sorry, not this. Just 1 second. I think I can share my screen. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to do it. Oh, I think now I can do it. Wait. Yeah, okay. Are you seeing the PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I'm sorry I didn't do a video, but I prefer doing the PowerPoint and I can speak with you. So if you have any questions, I can answer. So this project, A Listening a Day Keeps the Doctor Away, was a transdisciplinary activity involved in the skill activities of Escola de Artes do Norte Alentejano and developed by me as a music history teacher and a teacher of analysis and composition techniques in the same institution, and was part of my master's degree in music history teaching. Each student had online access to a list of music excerpts for daily access, and each one contained a link to the YouTube platform that all students have access to on their mobile devices. The project was designed to a school that belongs to Alto Alentejo, right here, and it has 4 schools in the district of Porto Alegre. So we have Porto Alegre, Ponte Sordo, the 2 schools that have available teaching from preschool to 12th grade, and Gavião e Souzel, who have activity at the moment until the 9th grade. It is a school that operates in several fields, not only in the articulated and supplementary teaching of music in partnership with the public schools of the district, But despite that, the school does not have the financial means necessary to ensure going to cultural spaces and concerts in other locations. And the musical offer, especially during the school time, is greatly reduced in the city of Porto Alegre. As an example, in the last school year, there were only 2 orchestral concerts in the city, one in October and the other in May. Since the cultural offer in classical music is reduced, thus raise the need to create a list and to address this failure for many of the students who are not able to attend concerts with quality in the city and make them know important performers even if via internet. A main goal, which I think is any teacher's goal, is to give students tools to construct their critical thinking. For me, this goal within the discipline of history and culture of the arts materializes in music listening, whether made by the student who wishes to become a performer or for that student whose future connection to the arts is only the role of a spectator. In addition, I believe that the active listening of a musical excerpt can make students better musicians. Many students speak of hearing certain interpretations, such as the valid ones. I think it is necessary to fight this prejudice and provide variants of the hearings to which they themselves are attached. Helping them find their voice as interpreters and listeners is important to me. Therefore, we tried to create a list available online so that any of the participants could access freely and at any time. The fact that they hold the hearing time wherever they want, at the time they want, gives freedom to participate, but at the same time assuming the commitment and responsibility to fulfill the predefined daily hearing and at the same time increase the typical classroom space and time. One of the first aims in this project was to understand if it was something interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary. At first, the concept seemed almost the same, and obviously that its root has the contact between 2 or more disciplines. But fundamentally, the goal was to go beyond the analysis of works in addition to the historical contexts, but to create a space outside the classroom which in itself fits all the elements of the disciplines, but that goes beyond that, which is more than the relationship and guidance of the teachers, but also commitments of the students to participate and evolve with the project. There were 12 students participating in the project, and all of them attend the disciplines of history and culture of the arts, history of music, and analysis and composition techniques. 4 in articulated regime and 8 in supplementary music regime, which means they go to the normal school and then they have the music afterwards. There are 7 students in the first year, 4 in the second, and 1 in the third, and they constitute 5 classes, which means some of the students have an individual class. And that's an obstacle when it comes to sharing and discussing class, since at its root it's a group subject. The project was thus able to fill this gap since it was possible to discuss the list amongst everyone. The students are part, of course, of this generation called millennial, born in the middle of technological era, and so they're accustomed to constantly stimulated visually and auditory. The typical exhibition history class without any kind of audiovisual reference is something I find to be very painful for students. For them, the image has to be always present, even at the time of study for a test. One of the constant questions in classroom is, can I study by PowerPoint? And often have difficulty understanding that in PowerPoint are the key summary points and not all the information. The constant need for sharing via mobile phone is something that becomes essential for them. And in this sense, the students have created a conversation between everyone where they added me later and where they shared questions or comments and something they find necessary. Of course, it also served as the sharing space for this list. When you move on to the musical domain and specifically hearing, the problem is the same. They have this difficulty in focusing exclusively in the audition of a work. Even in classroom, they often interrupt a piece with questions. The stimulus of entertainment music holds the student as a source of his stimulus and not as a search for meaning. And when we talk about listening to a musical work, it is necessary to listen appropriately in order to understand all aspects belonging to the piece. To understand in which domain should create this piece, it was necessary to understand the different perspectives of various authors. Schoenberg's approach to seeing listening as something objective was fundamental to me, because at first it is necessary to separate the various elements such as musical texture, structure, and development of the musical work. Inside the classroom, it was common to put some work that the students knew very well, and then themselves used to bring the melody or indicate where they had already heard the work, but if asked about its form, they could not explain it without hearing the excerpt again and thinking directly about it. In this sense, the audition of a work was only a field of entertainment because the students did not find any meaning in it. The search was then to go against what Vítor Queiroz told us, to go beyond the musical delight and understand each of the specificities of a work in order to become better listeners. We do not have two Portuguese words that distinguish the hearing from the concentrated hearing, but we have the verbs listen and hear. And I remember well working this difference and realizing that was this kind of listening concentrated throughout my music education, also having the advantages of having done all the music teaching in the large urban center and with access to cultural programs that gave audiences notions and contributed with certainty to a musical culture that my students don't have. Another aspect that is necessary to take into account was the musical literacy of the students and try to get away from the canon as much as possible. I do not consider at all that canon is something negative, since I agree with the authors Kirkel and Cavella that also teachers of music history and who argue that knowing the canon gives us possibilities to better understand the chronology of the history of music. But I also think that can be limiting. Since we only settle on the canon, we run the risk of hiding a huge set of environments, particularly outside the French, Italian, and German universes, which are also important and which are often not even addressed in the classroom. An example of this context is the total ignorance of students about the existence of opera in Portuguese. They are always impressed because they think there were no Portuguese composers to approach the genre. But it's also necessary to keep composers of the canon and make known to students more than the works for which they are known. For example, as Prokofiev and Peter and the Wolf, or Vivaldi and the Four Seasons. More than removing composers, just because we teachers consider them canonical, it is important to understand to what extent composers are or not part of the musical environment of students. Having predefined how we would like the students to listen to the works, we started making the list. Since it is difficult to know how the other teacher would choose certain excerpts, we limited the choice to 10 minutes maximum for each, and we tried to create which half of the month, and we defined that I would stay with the even days and the composition teacher the odd days. We tried to vary the instrumentation and also the periods and even the geography of each composer. Looking at the first week of the list, we can already notice the difference in instrumentation. At first, still no defined criteria, we tried to think about aspects that would not be repeated by the colleague, trying as much as possible not to repeat genres or including many works for the same musical period. I remember specifically choosing the Hymn of Epiphany for the 6th of January, and having conducted the research on Liberius Wallis, the choice for January 3rd is obviously a composer that all students know, but instrumentation is not so familiar to the students, and therefore it's justified once again the choice of a composer who is familiar at first, but that students immediately know by other type of instrumentation. There was also a place for acousmatic works. Sometimes that is that I instinctively thought about would raise some questions about the specifics of the work, but which curiously led to many pejorative comments, negative comments, because I quote, "There are no interpreters," they said, an expression that led to a healthy discussion about the domains of acousmatic music, in which students even spoke about the role of the machine in the commercial music they listened to. Also, one of the concerns for me was to include Portuguese songs or composers who have been active in the Iberian Peninsula and that we find in our libraries as we find Francisco Guerrero or the Cânticos de Negro of Santa Cruz de Coimbra, or later references to Manuel Tavares and Manuel Cardoso, both composers born in the district of Porto Alegre. At the last moments of the project, it was necessary to understand the students' opinion about it. A survey was then applied in June 2019 to understand the degree of involvement of students in the project, their comments and suggestions for it. One of the main obstacles encountered was the failure to comply with attendance, because the students said it was difficult to save the daily room for hearing, but several students admitted to listen to more than one excerpt daily to bridge this failure. One of the students even suggested the periodicity of the hearing could be changed to something monthly. In my opinion, a monthly hearing is little, but maybe it was a weekly audition, and if you booked a moment in the classroom for the discussion, could perhaps be more fruitful. Even though unconsciously on the part of the students, it was possible to notice those who followed the list entirely since they began to stand out in the classroom with regard to hearing exercises, in which more than indicate the categories to which each expert belongs, the students were able to discuss the work and even give some idea about a possible program of an instrumental work. Also, as a positive point, I highlighted the response of one of the students in the comment box of the survey that stated, "This project is very important for high school students because it helps those to formulate better opinions about what they like, what they do not like. For me, it's nothing more than the construction of the critical thinking. The goal was not for them to only go after our ideas, but to start discovering what they truly think." And so this brief extra was not part of my initial presentation, but I would like to share with you the impact of the pandemic in my classrooms. I believe that it was hard for all the students, but especially for music students. The end of last year, they couldn't attend class, go to concerts, or even share stands. My classes continued online with not much problems. And actually for those students that before had a class alone, we're now in a group offline. Instead of listening Spotify and YouTube, we watched some streamings of Portuguese and foreign orchestras, and students were delighted to do it, even if it wasn't on site. I think internet has now more than ever changed the classroom, and it will continue to do so. I hope I hear some of your shares also about your classrooms, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Cláudia. Cláudia, I invite everyone to ask some questions. Just a few moments before we change the speaker. But in the end, I would like to open the discussion again. Well, we have in the chat the Boris as I have concept of conscious contemplation and education of the listener. Could you expand upon this in your project?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, John. Thank you for your comments. I don't know this author, but I'm sure I'll read it. Thank you so much for this advice. For now, I don't have any. I mean, we have some more. I continue the project doing the weekly list instead of the daily list, like I said about the survey. But now I'm still now starting the new year, so I still don't know the impact for the other students. And then I think, sorry, I have here Eamon. I don't know if I'm saying it right. If I invited students to interact with the recordings.
Yeah.
Yes, there was always a debate, and I tried for them to talk about all the listenings, and I also do it in the classroom, and I always ask for them to share what they feel, what they hear, and not only about the musical aspects like form or instrumentation. No, I like them to try and talk about also the aesthetics, because it's so important for them. And I think history has this importance in the class curriculum, because they learn all the facts, and then I think they start to hear differently if they try and speak about all music. So I think that's it. Sorry, I don't know if I answered.
May I say something about this point that they don't listen every day?
Yes.
And I think the electronic devices can make wonders in this point. You can have your mobile to get some alarm to listen. So I think something like that, or using email at.
It's a good idea, like a notification.
Yeah,
go listen.
Yeah, go listen. Yeah, that's the point. Your I think your main point is you have to listen every day something. So the logistic is it's fundamental.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay.
Thank you.
No more questions now. So we move, and after that you can ask something about this also. So I would like to present João Ricardo. He has a master in musical arts from our university, our faculty. And he is a composer and a music teacher and editor, and he is in the CESEM, in the opera and contemporary music. The stage is yours, João Ricardo.
I will present a pre-recorded video. I don't know if I'm the one who has to... Oh, okay. Never mind.
Hello, my name is Juan Ricardo, and I work as a researcher at Universidade of Évora, studying Évора's historical soundscapes, and at Universidade Nova de Lisboa, studying opera and contemporary music. And I'm also a composer. Even though my academic curriculum is not focused on music composition, but on musicology, currently I still compose music for a living as well. So today I'll be talking about music composition resources available online, more precisely about content and content creators on YouTube who share knowledge and experiences with videos and lessons of music composition subject areas. YouTube has changed the way people consume, create and share music. YouTube videos are no longer considered simple products for simple consumption. They are now an art form in itself, and the content can be more than just simple entertainment. Anyone can upload and share their creative output for free anytime, anywhere. Thus, many contemporary youths are creating and sharing music online to anyone interested in listening or lucky enough to discover it. And just as the internet is full of creative people and people creating, many are eager or just curious for some artistic joy of their own. Regarding music and music education, students and amateurs can use both the internet and YouTube in many ways, like learning new techniques, develop and acquire knowledge, or share some of their musical endeavors. Likewise, teachers and or more experienced musicians can share their personal and professional experiences, their views and their knowledge, by creating videos and lessons available 100% of the time. This might be conceived as a form of distance learning and e-learning. Distance learning is nothing new. It is a service available for students who live far from educational institutions or simply can't attend due to schedule or financial reasons. Distance learning is often considered a second-rate option, a mere substitute for normal lessons due to a lack of direct contact between students and teachers. But internet and computer-based resources like video conferencing or web-based instructions provide new opportunities for students and educators. Innovative programs and multiple models can still provide new and fresh opportunities for many students, as online learning is a relatively young field. By creating new approaches and stretching the boundaries of music instruction, aided by new technologies and pedagogical models, the craft of music can heavily improve. Not only educational institutions dedicated to distance learning, but many collegiate institutions offer various programs at a distance.
I'm really excited about creating this class because it's really virtually a tasting menu of incredible techniques that will allow students to expand their musical vocabulary.
Berkeley is an institute for contemporary music and performing arts, with campuses in the United States and in Spain, whom also provide an award-winning distance learning program. Berkeley Online was founded in 2002 and offers online courses, certificates, bachelor's and master's degree programs, with a great variety of musical interests and subjects, such as music history, music theory, harmony or orchestration, as well as instruction in various softwares such as Ableton Live, Pro Tools, Finale or Sibelius. The ever-evolving internet is spawning new initiatives for distance learning, including the use of streaming video or audio and desktop video conferencing. The continual improvement, low cost for the user, and availability is bringing the internet more attention as a source for music instruction and as a tool for distance learning in music. The growing variety of videos available on YouTube include, not only for the professional and amateur musician, but also for the casual listener, professional and amateur performances, high and low quality recordings, popular music and classical music, all between legal uploads and illegal uploads. The possibility to immediately see and or hear different types of outputs and resources, such as masterclasses, recitals, tutorials, etc., makes YouTube the attractive archive we find it to be. These media resources can undoubtedly allow students, educators, and artists to refine and further develop their crafts, and for the sake of this paper, aid them in the creation and consumption of music. Being mostly a self-taught composer myself, with the occasional workshop and private lesson, I heavily relied, and still do, on the internet to study, learn new approaches, and discover new music. And by internet, I mean YouTube 50% of those times. The path of the self-taught musician leads to DIY tendencies. Do it yourself can be defined as a category meant for and by everyday people, with a goal to create some kind of artistic product independently, by their own and for their own results. These results can be accomplished by making use of software, hardware and insider skills, techniques and knowledge that were previously the domain of higher trained experts who had access to specialized and typically very expensive media production know-how, resources and spaces. One DIY teacher I particularly remember from my art school days, not only for being a memorable character, but now also for being a memorable meme, is this one.
Hello, I'm Bob Ross, and I'd like to welcome you to the 12th Joy of Painting series.
Bob Ross was a painter, most famous by hosting the television program The Joy of Painting. In each episode, Bob Ross taught techniques for landscape oil painting, completing a painting in each session. But it was thanks to the internet that Bob Ross became widely famous. All episodes are actually available on, guess where? YouTube. Nowadays, we need not to rely on scheduled television programs, thanks to the quantity and relatively ease of finding information online, like the famous how-to guides available everywhere, preferably with a video. That's why YouTube itself is one of the most popular and accessible resources within the online learning communities. It is part of a generation of user-generated content platforms such as SoundCloud or Bandcamp, but also social media as Facebook or Instagram. These services are part of what we conceive as Web 2.0, services characterized by their interactive content, consistent updates, and a reliable and constant real-time connection with other users. Rather than passively receiving knowledge, individuals are active participants in knowledge construction and in the learning process. YouTube allows not only artists to share their own creations and outputs, while also enabling them to be part of this participatory culture. So, we've all seen this kind of video, maybe not related to music composition itself, but to any other activities, artistic or not. Although some people might enjoy or appreciate it, this could be commonly referred to as clickbait. Cambridge Dictionary defines clickbait as any kind of online headline intended to attract attention and encourage people to click on a particular website link when the content might be of dubious value or interest. The existence of videos like this all over YouTube is what justifies the opinions of researchers like Alexandra Juhasz, always skeptical about the possibility and validity of learning something valuable with YouTube videos.
I study YouTube, and I think YouTube is a failure, really, in delivering the promises that these technologies really, the ways in which they really could enhance our ability to communicate, open up channels of discourse, allow people to build things together. I mean, that simply doesn't happen on YouTube.
The aforementioned author presented in her 2009 article a list of harsh lessons about YouTube. Juhasz believes that on YouTube, amateurs rule, experts are deflated, and authority is flattened, and that while it is exciting to hear from new and varied people, it is difficult to learn in an environment where vying options rule, where data is helter-skelter and hard to locate, and where no one can take the lead. On the other hand, Dugan research shows that music teachers use YouTube both in teaching and in their own research, in addition to posting their own content there, and that they use YouTube despite their reservations, in some cases extensively. In addition, according to Kari Veblen, YouTube and Skype are also being used by professionals in classrooms. Because of the wealth of materials available, YouTube is capable of satisfying most musical and information needs. Christopher Kayari claims that YouTube makes access to music much easier and more affordable, while Katie Lay's research shows that both academics and students rely on YouTube for its accessibility and content. Obviously, one of the first problems with the use of YouTube for learning purposes has to do with the quality and validity of what is heard and seen online. Many questions should be asked, such as, how do we choose a video, in this case of music composition or performance? How can we make sure that such choices are appropriate? And what do we mean by appropriate? How can students on their own choose videos for critical academic thought? And how can we ascertain the security of the videos in teaching and learning environments? I should say as soon as possible that by no means I believe that YouTube and or the internet on their own are a quality and complete substitute to an academic or formal education. What I'm trying to demonstrate is how YouTube can both complement or even help with some preliminary information and guidelines to what someone wants to do and wants to create. Or, in other words, how YouTube can be a very useful tool to musicians, self-taught or not, and possibly a resource to those who choose a formal education or an independent path. As far as YouTube and what's available regarding music composition and lessons on the craft, considering some subjects of music composition, like analysis, history, orchestration, etc., there are plenty of options providing information on those subjects online. Just like Berkeley offers a formal academic option for distance students, other important academic institutions also offer some kind of instruction for the YouTube consumer, like the LSO.
Part of this session has been devoted to streaming techniques. And what we really mean is the different sort of sounds you can make on a string instrument.
The London Symphony Orchestra is Britain's first independent, self-governing orchestra and made up of nearly 100 musicians who also perform regularly as soloists and in chamber groups. Here, LSO's principal second violin David Alberman leads a session for music students examining the different tonalities and effects that a stringed instrument can produce. The LSO provides many video lessons.
Hello and welcome to LSO St Luke's. My name is Rachel Leach and today I'm joined by musicians from the London Symphony Orchestra.
These videos are specially produced recording of LSO Discovery's annual A-level seminar. Lessons exploring and explaining pieces are somewhat common on YouTube, be it analysis of pieces by classical composers or of more popular songs.
Hey, welcome to 12 Tone. We set out to study iconic songs, and you don't get much more iconic than Stairway to Heaven.
Videos like these, more targeted to musicians in general and less focused on formal and classical analysis, are very common on YouTube, with many channels and content creators like the one we just saw, Adam Neely, Ben Levine, among many others. Focusing more on a composer's wants and needs, there are many options available, in which professional and experienced composers share lessons online on various subjects regarding music composition.
Hello, my name's David Bruce. So I wanted to look today at a piece with some pretty advanced tonal harmonies. But before we get into the joys of analysing and using big chord names like B13, sharp 11, flat 9, I wanted to just talk for a minute about why people use these chords.
Composer David Bruce began his undergraduate studies in music in 1988 at Nottingham University. He obtained a master's degree in composition at the Royal College of Music in 1993 and a PhD in composition at King's College around 1999. Since 2017, Bruce has been sharing pedagogical videos, mostly on Western classical music, on topics such as music history and analysis.
In our first lesson, we will arrange a simple chorale phrase for strings, for woodwinds, and then for brass.
With a video production a little less impressive, but with great content nonetheless, Alan Belkin is a Canadian composer, teacher, organist, and pianist. He is now retired, but still teaches privately and online. His YouTube channel, with more than 10,000 subscribers, has many pedagogical videos on composition, harmony, counterpoint, orchestration, and analysis for composers.
Hello, today I'm going to have a close look at the Capriccio for Violin and Orchestra by Krzysztof Penderecki.
This next one is Samuel Andreev, a composer, hoboist, and professor of harmony and analysis. His channel, with nearly 30,000 subscribers from over 160 countries, is regularly uploaded with videos devoted to analysis of contemporary works or interviews with other musicians and composers. Ultimately, the goal of this project is to create a YouTube channel like the next ones we're about to see. Although I do enjoy and learn from the channels above, the ones I like and visit the most are undoubtedly score videos. These videos provide complete scores and recordings that any contemporary music student and listener enjoys. One I visit almost daily is the Contemporary Classical. This channel is mainly focused on classical music composed after 1945, with different types of post-tonal music and a strong emphasis on composers of the second half of the 20th century and beyond. There are many channels and videos on YouTube that provide scrolling scores, and this one is especially helpful since many contemporary scores and recordings like these are not so easy to come by as, say, Beethoven or Mozart. Another YouTube channel I visit almost every day is Score Follower. Score Follower is a YouTube-based archive. Instead of original manuscripts and letters, it preserves and makes available performances and scores. As record companies and publishers seek their next steps, Score Follower look to a non-profit model to support and maintain what it considered to be fundamental materials of this field. The goal here is to provide access to a type of experience, viewing a score while listening to the recording, only otherwise available to the privileged students or faculty, who happens to be affiliated with a university that has a large catalog of new music scores. The outcome of this project, supported by the state-of-the-art and the earlier examples, will consist of a YouTube channel with scores ranging from composers of the 16th century to pieces being composed and performed nowadays, always requesting, when possible, their scores and recordings from the composers themselves. Dedicated exclusively to Portuguese music and Portuguese composers, the goal is to create an audiovisual archive on YouTube, free of access, but also a channel that can be used as a learning and educational tool, not only for young music students, but for the music community in general, and for anyone who finds it useful. Right now, I'm getting not only information, but also scores and recordings from the composers, while dwelling on some practical questions. I will also keep a journal regarding the evolution of the channel itself, the reception, number of likes, comments, views, positive or negative reviews, etc. While at the same time requesting from the composers a small interview with 2 or 3 questions regarding their personal use and opinion on this kind of videos and their utility and positive effects on composers and musicians, as well as program notes about the recordings for the video description. The majority of the videos will follow the first example of score videos presented in this paper, with a simple page turn of the score along with music. As an example, here's a video I uploaded a few years ago in 2016, and it's a score not available anywhere, transcribed by me. Although the score itself is poorly edited and the channel is virtually unknown, this video achieved a considerable amount of views, and it was the first time I realized how important and useful these kind of videos are to musicians. Ideally, I'll try to create videos with performances when available, just like the examples from the Score Forward channel, and just like in this video, which I created using the same idea back in 2019 for my master thesis presentation. So that's all from me. See you in a second, and thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, João Ricardo. There are questions? We have 12 minutes to...
So yeah, thank you, João, so much for your presentation. I just have, when you showed that example of how to learn a specific type of composition in like 5 minutes, I've also been seeing that there's so many videos and channels that basically put this idea, this romantic idea that being a composer is very hard and that you must be like illuminated by God to achieve any kind of artistic production. And there's like, oh, a video in 10 minutes, how to compose like Hans Zimmer, how to compose like Howard Shore, how to compose someone. And so if it's so easy for anyone to compose either as a sound or as a style, why should anyone with all the digital tools and free resources pursue an academic institution if YouTube basically offers you a way to also be a composer and a famous one just by using these tools? I don't know if you thought about this.
I don't believe YouTube completely satisfies any of the different subjects that the university can offer. I believe it's a very useful tool. I myself use it daily, constantly, but as a tool and not as the full education. You know, I studied history and some analysis to some extent on my masters,
but I didn't have that specific education for composition, like orchestration and full-on analysis. And I believe YouTube can, in some ways, help the students, not fully, but partially, I believe.
Okay, so let me just ask in a different way. Um, when I was also doing my research, I talked with people that composed entire symphonies without knowing music. They didn't know what was a C or a major scale. And through the use of programs and the digital free lessons on YouTube, they were able to apprehend those skills and compose something that, I mean, I think about me that I learned music and I don't know how to compose. And like, okay, this person doesn't know music, and we're able to compose like a 2-hour soundtrack for a video game. So I don't know, like, how do you see this phenomenon as a composer, to see so many people interested in producing music, even though they do not have a formal background in music, and through only free resources such as courses and videos and etc. If these people can also be a composer. And I think that's my final question. Then you have another one in the chat.
Yes, the being a composer, it's a really hard question, but I believe I know what you're talking about. Like with a DAW, someone can lose like 10 hours and compose a relatively good soundtrack, you know. But this is, I think this my point here is on a more, I don't like to say academic composition, but a more, I don't know how to put it, a more really an academic composition, not just film or video game composition. Not that they aren't hard, but it's how do I put it? It's more intuitive, I believe. It's not something that you have to really have a grasp of history and the craft of composition to create something different, you know. Like with before, like 5 years ago, I composed pieces using only FL Studio, and I didn't even know how to write a score properly. And now I evolved. I believe I evolved of after that. And you know, the pieces were still there, and they were not half bad, but they didn't have the craft and the time I believe it's needed to for the composition.
The question from John van
Yes.
der Vert.
I had a question.
Yeah.
When you talk about the 5 lessons, you mean Juha's 5 lessons? I believe it's that PowerPoint. Yes, yes. That. Those lessons are the negative. I believe I believe it was the negative impact of YouTube and what not to expect on YouTube. So your question is, therefore, is a bit naive to assume it must be more collaborative when that wasn't its model. Well, yes, anyone can put it, but also anyone can comment and share and have their opinions on it. It's the evolution of YouTube that made it more collaborative than exposure. I don't know if I'm answering the question correctly.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to make a point that YouTube is like a library,
Yes.
but without an editor, a librarian. So you have everything from very good to very bad, really. And that's you can have marvelous examples, and so you can maybe have some teaching artists. So the teaching artist is not a teacher, is an artist who, with his life,
Yes.
everything is included, shows how to compose, for instance, or how to play, how to be in in music, and there are marvelous examples of that examples in the sense of the exemplars, but John says here the education aspect, it's another thing. It's a very good YouTube is very good for learning. Learning, it's one thing. It's a process. It's an individual thing. I learned something from YouTube. But if you are talking about education, education it's another other thing. It needs a teacher. So that thing, YouTube educates you. No, a teacher educates you. You can learn, and learning and education, it's a completely different thing. For I'm using Gert Biesta. Bista. It's Hollandish author. I think it's very important to ask what is education? What is education for? The purpose. So without a purpose, you can do nothing with YouTube or a library of books. So you must have someone who have a purpose and guides you to something. Google knows everything. No, they have a great basis of data, but information is not knowledge. So
yes, I agree. I don't know. Yeah, I agree.
You should agree, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
There's something different, like having a not a private, but some sort of connection more close than YouTube, which is open access to all. And I believe that that relationship,
marvelous,
student teacher, it's needed. But again, YouTube can help. I believe.
Yeah, if in my youth, I'm youth a long time ago. I'm still youth, but if I had the YouTube, I don't have a pickup during my teenagers. So if I had that, I will be a musician, full musician. I'm half a musician, just the hard part. I'm a psychologist, but I think and teacher. Teacher development is my theme. So I'm accentuating that. Also with Cláudia, that's a marvelous tool, and you must have someone to work with the tools.
Yes.
So it's not it's that marvelous pieces of Berkeley and other schools. Okay, that's pieces, very good pieces to like a handbook. They show you how to do something, but why are you trying to learn something, how to do something? That's the purpose.
If I can add, I think it's a tutor. It's like a tutor. We go there if we want like some brief explanation, even though we don't know if it's I mean, from Berkeley, of course, maybe it's correct, but from homemade, maybe we don't know if it's, I don't want to say valid, but if it's 100% good material, we say. But I think it's important, as John said here, YouTube as a tutor, I think.
But also a tutor. There are marvelous tutor in that Berkeley's and all that stuff, marvelous made. Okay, but a tutor is not a teacher. A teacher is more than that.
Yes, I agree.
A recent video I saw about how to teach classes in the Zoom. The Pedler, it's the name of the guy. He said, you don't use videos from someone who explains better than you. No, you made your own videos explaining to your students. That connection with you, the teacher, it's very, very important. Don't miss that. Okay, you can see this and this and this, but it's me, the teacher. It's very important, and you can use the YouTube with your videos to engage your students in, and you must show your passion to get to show how to be a passion about something.
Agreed.
So there's no, yes, thank you for your listening. Thank you for your interventions. I think we will meet somewhere. I don't know how to end this, but I think.
So thank you so much, Professor, again,
Okay.
for being available to chair, and thank you to all the presenters for a great panel. We're now going to have 30 minutes break for coffee, so please stay there, and in half an hour we'll see each other again for the second panel of the morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
format she will not be able to present. So this panel will only be two people, Ricardo and then Juri. So, and then the chair, that is Professor Paula, that she'll be here online shortly. So yeah, that's basically it, and thank you so much, and we're almost starting. Thank you.
Professor, I think we are ready.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry for the precipitation. It's the first time that I participate in a hybrid conference, and I'm so glad of this opportunity. I hope you had a very nice coffee break. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to the panel entitled Me, Myself and YouTube, representing the musical self on the screen, which is undoubtedly a very rich and significant, relevant topic nowadays. We will begin with Ricardo Pereira. He develops his work in the domain of the piano performance, musicology, and composition, especially to theater. He studied piano with Rosgaard Lindgaardsen. I'm so sorry if I'm not pronouncing it well. Jaime Mota and Cecilia Zibritz, with whom he completed the professional degree of piano in 2017. He graduated in musicology at the Faculty of Social Sciences of the new University of Lisbon, and he is now attending the master in the same domain and university. He is a collaborator of CESEM, and recently he has composed music to drama theater, such as The Three Marias, Ruído, O Casaco, among other. So, Ricardo, you have the stage.
Thank you for your words, and good morning to you all. I'm now going to share the screen. Yeah. So this is my first ever communication in English, so I would like to apologize in advance for any pronunciation or grammatical incorrection. I'm truly sorry, but I'm not used to speaking or thinking in English. Okay, so Tiffany Poon, vlogging the life of a classical concert pianist. How can YouTube peel back the curtain on classical music? My paper title points out the main idea of my communication, namely the need felt by this young pianist for peel back the curtain on classical music and the role of YouTube in doing so. Think the YouTube as a tool for social engagement and to build a world career as a concertist while creating an active web community around classical music issues. It also highlights what I call the subjective individuality as a mark on YouTube vlogging communication. Let us start by its beginning. Who is Tiffany Poon? This is her official biography as presented on her website. She was born in Hong Kong in 1996. She has a philosophy degree from Columbia University and studied piano at Juilliard. Has already won several awards in international piano competitions. By the time I wrote my paper proposed, she had less than 200,000 subscribers on her YouTube channel. At the beginning of this week, she had 260 subscribers, which shows well the growth of the channel with her name. Her first video on YouTube is she playing the piano at the age of 10, a Mozart piano concerto with orchestra, and dates from the 3rd of October 2007, which means it makes it precisely tomorrow 13 years that the video was posted, almost the age of the YouTube. For 10 years, from 2007 until 2017, she only uploaded videos of her playing the piano, like many other piano players, allowing her followers to watch the development of her technique and interpretation. Almost 3 years ago, she did something more. Her first video facing the camera, answering questions from her subscribers and followers. Here's a little excerpt from that video.
Whoa, a video without a piano! Hee. Oh man, I feel like my neighbor's gonna hear me talk. And that's just weird. Anyway, so I wanted to do some Q&As because I get asked the same questions over and over again. Also, YouTube, it's been a little bit just of me, not a little bit, it has been since, I don't know, since 2007. It's just me playing the piano on my YouTube channel, with the exception of one Q&A that I did last year for a YouTube live stream, but I want you guys to know more about me as a person and not just as a mute playing the piano. Oh, I know some of you will probably be coming to this video from my other social media.
So, a few days later, she posted her first vlog, and from that moment on, she has been regularly posting vlogs and Q&A videos about practicing tips, warming up exercises, sight reading, memorization, stage frightening, among other things. Why would a professional classical pianist spend a good part of her time recording and editing videos to post on YouTube? Tiffany answers that question on her website under the separator Mission, where we can read, and I am now quoting, "Simply put, my mission is to inspire all generations, the old and the new, to appreciate classical music using social media." But wait, classical music and social media? As a classical pianist living in the 21st century, I feel privileged and obligated to revive classical music. Prior to social media, it is easy to perceive classical music as something old, distant, and removed from our modern society. Most classical music listeners probably only get to see and hear the finished products of musicians' journey, whether that is from a seat in the auditorium or listening to a recording somewhere far away from the real-life musician. There seems to be a disconnect between classical music and the real world. With YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, etc., I can bridge that mysterious gap between classical music and the modern audience. This is why, in addition to being a classical pianist, doing the usual practicing and performing, I am devoted to growing and connecting with my audience online. This is why you may stumble upon videos of me casually talking to the camera or practicing while you were browsing through my piano videos. In fact, Tiffany is truly dedicated to this mission, and that's why we can watch, for example, her preparation to international piano competitions, including the backstage just moments before she goes on stage, something that we barely have access to. She has around 260 videos already posted on YouTube, and this mission became an important part of her job and a solid foundation for her piano career. On the one hand, the number of subscribers and the hours of visualizations of the videos enables her channel to be monetized, so she can receive monthly some profit from her videos. This source of income is complemented with the support from the Patreon platform and the option to donate from PayPal. On the other hand, the level of popularity of her channel and the online engagement with audience all over the world draw attention from brands and cultural agents who offer her partnerships, scholarships, and concert contracts. Just to mention one example, Steinway & Sounds offer her a free rental Steinway piano and appointed her ambassador of the brand. This, in turn, grant her access to Steinway factories, rooms, and to the Steinway CEO himself, originating exclusive content to her YouTube channel. Hence, we could affirm that Tiffany is not only a pianist, but a cultural mediator, maybe a truly YouTuber. But this, curiously, is something that she vehemently rejects. This rejection has to do with the apparent devaluation of her talent and seriousness as a musician when presented as a vlogger or a YouTuber, a negative consequence that she strives so it doesn't happen. Another negative consequence has to do with the level of exposure of her career, creating some high expectation from fans, for instance, expectations for winning competitions, and that are not easy to manage, and that has already made her move away from social media for a period of time. It is not easy to communicate failure, to show vulnerability, and keep a positive message. Despite that, the existence of her channel seems to be so far more beneficial than prejudicial in terms of her professional career as a concertist. Until now, we were talking about YouTube and Tiffany channel under the perspective of the artist. But what can we say about its spectators? Has Tiffany work really bridged the big gap between classical music and the modern audience? A look at the comments shows clearly one thing. There's a lot of people inspired to learn piano or to proceed with classical music studies. The main group of subscribers and followers seems to be music students, piano players, or piano lovers. Here are a few comments from her last video. Tiffany, you are the only person I know so far who inspires people to take up classical music studies by simply posting vlogs about your life as a concert pianist and leading by example. This alone is a huge reward for all the work you are putting into that. And another one, Tiffany, you were my inspiration to play the piano. I was so into your videos and inspired me to play the magnificent instruments. Thank you for the wonderful vlogs. The comments highlights the importance of the quality of her communication based on her daily life, the way she deals with musical issues in practice situations. By showing her daily routine and sharing her study program, repertoire, and the news about her career, Tiffany gives us the sensation of being part of her life and somehow part of the classical world. This sensation of belonging is reinforced by the comments she does on her own piano practicing videos as she were talking directly with us, which we can see in the following example. Practicing video. Okay. So this is post-lockdown. You can see the shares with safe distance. And here are the comments that she does about her own playing. And this was recorded one day before the concert. So we can see the sheet music, her playing, and her comments. Okay, so I think we now have an idea how these videos look like. It is quite hard to watch a pianist practicing one day before the recital, and even more to read her thoughts while doing so. Here's an interesting comment on that video. I've appreciated classical music, but have never been connected to it until I began listening to you. When practicing, as you try different phrasing, I begin to hear the subtle difference in voice you want to use in the story. I didn't realize there is poetry in music. One important part of her dynamic is complemented with other social media, mainly Instagram, where besides sharing photos and videos, Tiffany tries to create a participative community by, for example, letting her audience choose which piece she will play on concert programs, what the themes will be used on the videos, etc. During the pandemic lockdown, Tiffany used her channel to create awareness of social and healthcare issues by doing some Play for Charity concerts live on YouTube, where people could donate money to the COVID-19 frontline workers. The experience went well and made her realize that she could use her channel and the community around it to help some organizations who are concerned with musical education and musicians' rights. So she created a non-profit foundation named Together with Classical, where she aims, and I am now quoting, provide a place for everyone to unite together with classical music, be proud of their passion, share and promote the beautiful music, while also support classical musicians, education programs, and causes that encourage all to be kind and keep striving. This project starts, as we'll see, with a challenge and a question to her audience of sharing their first classical experience. And this is the last video that I'm going to show.
Hi, Tiffany.
Hey, Tiffany.
Hello, Tiffany.
Hi, Tiffany. And hi, friends.
Hi. Greetings. How are you? It's been a really long time. But I promise there's a huge, huge reason why, and it's a very exciting reason, actually. So in case you forgot, hi, I'm Tiffany. And a month ago, I asked you guys what was your first experience with classical music, and
what does classical music mean to me?
the reason I started this vlog project was because I started YouTube vlogging because I wanted to communicate with you and bridge the gap between the traditional classical audience and the musician. But in order for this communication to really be a communication, it has to be both ways. It can't just be me telling you things. So that's why I asked you to share your stories. I can't believe so many of you actually shared your stories and were so honest and open and so thoughtful. So thank you. It took me 15 days to read every single responses because
Okay, then she will
a lot of you
read
wrote
some of the answers.
mini essays, some even wrote long essays for me. I think the total amount of words was something like 250.
It is remarkable the number of answers and the number of people sharing their stories and videos on a true community spirit. Together with Classical also has the Classical Chat series videos where Tiffany talks with professional musicians or classical music listeners and amateurs. One question that kept coming to my mind while I was thinking about this phenomenon, and you're probably thinking the same now, was what does Tiffany mean by classical music? What does Together with Classical stands for, musically speaking? And how is this fulfill the objective of approximate the modern audience with the classical world? Tiffany's view of classical seems pretty classical in a way. Her repertoire is mainly the canonic piano literature from the classical and romantic period. And despite that she invites other musicians for the classical chats, the content of her channel is basically about piano music. It does not speak about composers, aesthetics, history, and social problematics. So, this kind of thought is somehow based on stereotypes and prejudice about classical music, which is quite interesting. I wonder how much is she responsible for what her fans think classical music is. In conclusion, this case study shows how can one use YouTube not only as a professional tool, but as a platform for social and political concerns, even when performing piano classical music. It shows how daily life vlogging of a pianist and the sharing of the preparation process to a concert can be more inspiring than performance itself, overvaluing the representation of everyday life. It shows us that YouTube can surely shake the curtains on classical music, but not so sure if it can peel them back. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ricardo, for this very fascinating talk. I am sure that there are many questions in the audience and among the participants. We have here a comment from Holly Rogers. She says that she loves the video where the pianist shows her practice the day before her recital, mistakes and all. This put emphasis on processes in a similar way. Jacob Collier, I was precisely thinking on Jacob Collier composition videos that he talked about yesterday. This is such an important part of new media, which seems to promote constant change and growth rather than final products. Thank you for your paper, Ricardo. Have you have some comments on this?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's really an important part of the new media. But what I found interesting on this particular case is that by trying to break or to bridge the gap between classical music and the modern audience or the people now living, she is somehow reinforcing some stereotypes about classical music, which is quite interesting. I mean, what would happen if she started to post videos about other issues that are really concerned with classical music problems, perhaps musicology questions that we raise here on this conference yesterday and already today. But yeah, it's really an important aspect of musicians now live, as Jacob Collier or Tiffany Poon and some other musicians that are concerned with sharing the process, because yeah, music is not a product, and this kind of videos and YouTube is a great platform to show that, and to show that there are humans behind music, and to show the process, the failure, the rehearsal, and somehow to be more close to people.
Yes, so in one way you have the reinforcement of a stereotype, and also you have so many times, mainly the most known repertoire to be very accessible to lots of people and to engage more publics. And on the other side, you have this emergence of and need of intimacy and of a connection that goes further beyond the idea of concert. So we are challenging in these and other processes and products and ideas, we are challenging the very model of the classical concert that today is for many young people something belonging to the past, and that came from 19th century, and that sometimes it's reproduced exactly or almost exactly the end of 19th century. So I understand that people need some other way of connect. And for other, I would like also to ask you, and of course, everyone is invited to make his points. Also to ask you how do you relate this to a Big Brother era? The idea of there is the need to share intimate moments, and to show the backstage, and to have the idea that nothing of this that this young pianist does is staged, but it is staged. It is very well staged, but it's very different than a concert modeled. So it is very interesting, this idea of what it is real, what is not real, what is staged, what is not staged. So isn't a false idea of staging of reality? It is a false idea of reality, Ricardo.
Yeah, there are interesting questions, thank you. And what I found fascinating, it's not only this aspect of staging the everyday life and this kind of false sense of intimacy, but how this sharing is also part of her professional career, because she's getting profit from it. So when she does a vlog of her daily life, she's also working because she will monetize the video and she will get money from it. She will get attention from the brands, and I think Tiffany is very conscious about it. And there is a kind of a Big Brother aspect on it, but in this particular case, she only shares music content. She does not share, and she's very careful with that, details from her personal life other than piano and music concern or music aspects of her daily life. But even these rehearsal times, how she prepares, how she sight readings, how she learns a new piece, and it really relates with the questions Professor was making, and I think it's interesting, especially this consciousness of that. My daily life vlogging are part of my piano career and are part of my mission. My mission as a musician, as a pianist, does not end on the stage and does not end with the performance.
Yes, I think it's very interesting, the relationship with the idea of reality show. I'm not saying that is the same thing. I'm only saying that in the 90s, last century, we began a new era that gave us the need to, how do you say, espreitar?
Look
Please.
up, yeah.
Look up and to look discreetly and not being seen to the other home or practice or profession, or and I think this is now exploding also in what concerns professional careers, as Ricardo is saying us. So the blogging and vlogging, we say that bloggers today, it's a real, very successful profession. And it's a work. I think that Joanna is going to make a question. So Joanna. Hello, Joanna.
Wait, I was connecting the microphone. Okay, so Ricardo, thank you so much for your presentation. I really liked it, and since Professor was talking about the idea of reality show and accompanying the daily life, and at the same time how bloggers is like a successful profession, and YouTuber is now recognized as a profession. I was just wondering if you, during your research, have you considered the case of the channel of the Two Set Violin, because they basically, I mean, they almost have 3 million subscribers, and they stopped being professional violinists in an orchestra to dedicate their lives to YouTube and to show that classical music can be funny. And like, I don't know, I think the majority of the subscribers have like between 20 to 35 years old. So this idea that classical music is still something that can be young and we can make fun to, so it's really interesting how they can basically shift the paradigm of classical music being like on a pedestal and is something that is very common and ordinary. So if Tiffany is doing the same thing at the performer level and basically demystifying this idea of being a pianist and going to concerts, how do you see her phenomenon inside a global phenomenon, YouTube, of classical music being something super ordinary, and to not make it like such an artistry as in the romantic idea that the professor also talked about in the 19th century?
Yeah. One difference that I found in Tiffany's case from, for example, the two-set violin, is that she doesn't feel comfortable with being a YouTuber or a vlogger. And I think two-set violin, for example, are more comfortable with that. So they are comfortable, they are conscious that they are musicians, violinists, but they also make content to YouTube, and that is a profession that they can do, and that's their mission. Tiffany Poon has it's not comfortable with that. She always says on her social media that she is not a YouTuber, and that this project on YouTube is something that she does besides playing the piano, who each is her professional, and the main concerns are really to be a pianist doing performance, and this is like something that she does besides that. And that's the difference between, for example, other YouTubers that are clearly comfortable with being musicians, and also YouTubers and doing content for social media.
But that is also very interesting because she's looking for her niche, her way of doing things, and also for monetizing it. So she is creating her identity as not being a blogger.
Yeah.
So I'm something different. Hello, I'm something different, so I know really what I'm talking about. I'm a very, very good musician, and I only talk about music and play. So I'm not a blogger. So I think that YouTube is spreading out the possibilities of new professional trends arrive on the rise. And it is very interesting the way that people as this pianist tries to define her circle and define her work niche precisely to show that she is a YouTube and internet worker, but not a blogger. and not a vlogger and not something else, but a real pianist. And it is very interesting. So it's a question of status and of constructing an identity and way of having the chance of surviving professionally on this practice. I think it's really, really very interesting.
Yeah, I think we have a question here.
Can I? Hi. Well, thanks for your presentation. I just wanted to make a small point more than a question, but I think adding to the fact that we are in a Big Brother era, I think it would also be interesting I think that this approach also stems further back from almost Bernstein. Bernstein's approach of being aware that as a classical musician you do have to open up, which I think is quite a revolutionary stance, and I think it would be interesting to draw that parallel as well.
Yeah, sure.
You know, children's concerts, but also then realizing that it's not only children who have to open up to classical music. There's a huge audience out there who could take so much more enjoyment, and I think that's the key word here. Rather than problematizing it, I'm aware that yes, you could use this platform for problematizing musicology and composition, but I think it's about appreciation as well, which is maybe the ultimate goal of music. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to add.
Yeah, totally, and it's using the new tools that are available in YouTube and the social media to do so. Yeah, that's totally it. Okay. Yeah, we have a comment here from. Can you hear me?
Alô?
Yes.
Eu deixei de ouvir durante pedaço. I think we have here a question, another question. You were saying that, Ricardo, yes? John?
Yeah, so doesn't this make classical music still just as bubbled? Her persona is what she shows. I will consider her YouTube identity still as isolated, just filtered through a different lens. Yes, in a way it is isolated. I think she's trying to break that idea, but not so successfully. Together with classical music, that is a very recent channel and foundation that she created like a month ago. She's trying to expand that way of being on YouTube and this persona, and she's talking with other musicians that normally are not on YouTube talking with people, and she's trying to expand this movement for other classical musicians and other classical areas rather than the piano.
I thought it was really, really interesting, the comment on Bernstein. And I am thinking on all the generations of musicians, of extraordinary musicians that communicated music on so many ways. In the beginning in the radio, in television, and now in the internet. So I think it's also that it's really a new way of just communicating a number of works that are really sometimes very forgotten or distant from the public, and to break the codes, to be near the listeners, and also I would like very much to know what Ricardo thinks about when classical music turned out to be contemporary music. So this is another gap and another filter. So after Schoenberg and after Boulez, is it still possible to make us more near the production, the composition, of what is music in nowadays, in what concerns to academical music? I think that's really very complicated and much more than to listen to Beethoven or Rachmaninoff or even the first years of Schoenberg. So it's something completely different. So I don't see much the need or the same movement of dissemination of communication among musicians and other musicologists in what concerns these new old languages of more than 100 years old. What do you think, Ricardo?
Yeah, it's somehow this channel and these videos are a reflection of what happens on the concert programs and the concert halls almost all over the world. So classical pianists are still a bit attached to that classical canon, and I think this is a good demonstration of that. Yeah, I agree with what Paulo were saying. I think we have another question. I don't know if you have time to answer.
Go on, Ricardo, because I think we only have two intervenants, so you can
so,
go on.
How do you think this divide between serious concert classical musician and relatable YouTube classical musician might develop in the future? Well, that's a really interesting question. I think in the future we will want to have more channels and more classical musicians like Tiffany, who not only do performance but also shares some of the process. One thing really important in Tiffany's case is that she's really has a strong formation. She studied at Juilliard. She has won several awards. So her technique and interpretation is really high quality, and it's professional quality, like almost all worldwide concert pianists. And this guarantees to YouTube musicians also a kind of how do we say, like a mark that YouTube musicians can also be serious concert classical musicians. So it's breaking that gap, and that professional concert pianists can be on YouTube and be YouTube musicians. Of course, we have in YouTube a lot of vlogging piano videos, and most of them are students and amateurs. We have a few channels like Tiffany's, who is really a professional and is really doing a world career. So I think in the future maybe we'll see more of that.
So I think it's time now to thank Ricardo and for this very challenging talk. And I'm sure that we will discuss this theme afterwards in lunchtime and some other meetings. And now I would like very much to welcome our next speaker. So perhaps I can introduce now Yuri Giannini. Yuri Giannini was born in Rome. He studied musicology and Slavic studies in Cremona and Vienna, and holds a PhD from the University of Music and Performing Arts of Vienna, for which his dissertation was on Hans Swarovski and his translation of opera libretti. Since 2010, he has been a research fellow and lecturer in music history at the same university, and since 2018, he holds a senior scientist position at the same institution. Additionally, he writes as freelance music journalist on several themes, including music theater, music of the 20th and 21st centuries, jazz, and Eastern European popular music. His research interests and ideology are ideology and historiography, relations between musicology and translation studies, pedagogy of music history in pluricultural settings, and cultural history of music. Very welcome, Yuri Giannini. Please, the stage is yours.
So thank you for a kind presentation. Good morning, everybody from physical and virtual audience. So thank you for inviting me and for organizing this conference despite such a difficult framework. So I started dealing with YouTube and in a wider sense with the role of digital culture in music history, organizing in winter term 2019-2020, together with two colleagues of my institute, a lecture series with the title Musical Digitology, dedicated to music and music history in times of digitization and WWW. So if somebody is interested in it, I've put the link in the slide. This is the last one. And so we decided to organize this cycle of lectures because we realized that YouTube and other virtual and digital channels were practically omnipresent in our academic everyday life, whether in research or teaching. And then lockdown came, and I started to realize that on a much more deeper level, when I had myself to teach in virtual channels, to appear as virtual person in digital forums and similar platforms, and having to deal, like it or not, with matters of digital self-representation. But what has all this to do with Philip Auslander's theory of musical persona? So I listed here some of the publication of the US American Theater and Film and Performance Studies scholar to which I refer, and so I can share the presentation if you wish, simply ask or write me. Auslander's theory of musical persona is about the contextual representation of identities. Musical objects serve here only as a pretext for the actions of performers. Auslander defines the term musical persona by referring to Simon Fritz's emphasis on the performative aspects of star personality and song personality in the book Performing Rights, one of the standard works of popular music research. Auslander adds a third component to what Fritz calls double enactment. So for Auslander we have the following differentiation. We have the real person, so the performer as human being. We have the performance persona, the performer as a social being, replacing, so to speak, the term personality, and then the character, what Fritz's song personality is, namely the role that is sung in the lyrics of a song. Of course, in the latter case, non-singing musicians can develop other narrative strategies to develop characters. The persona, the social staging of the artist, is one of the essential components with which the audience itself identifies. It is, so to speak, inseparably connected with the musical product. In the preliminary works for this theory, Auslander also dealt with questions of performance in cyberspace. In my opinion, however, it was still an immature object of investigation with regard to musical performance. At the beginning of the 2000s, the streaming or the digital mediation of music was still exclusively limited to MP3, first with Napster, then with other legal or less legal peer-to-peer platforms, and thus the visual areas of musical actions were completely excluded in this kind of reception of music. So one of the most important factors of Auslander's performative theory, their interaction with the audience, could not be investigated or only fragmentarily. It was not until 2005 that the video portal YouTube was founded and put on the www. So one might think that in the musical field this was just an intensification of the MTV principle, or rather a huge collection archive of all kinds of material. But not really. The medial increase seems to me to be a very big one, because users can watch, rate, comment, upload video clips for free on the portal, and since 2007, the YouTube Partner Program also enabled video producers to earn money. So the whole thing evolved from an archive to a digital infrastructure. I found the case study I would like to present today by chance, searching for examples in YouTube for my music history classes. I was searching for Chopin examples, and as you probably know, the YouTube algorithm continues for a while to provide you with proposals. And so I finally, unexpected, came in touch with the, for me, not yet known 1982 born Uzbek-American pianist Lola Astanova, which is an academical trained classical pianist, nearly exclusively performing on YouTube and other digital spaces, and adopting therefore new audiovisual performance formats and typical do-it-yourself strategies, which are typical of net influencers. So I got this proposal from the YouTube algorithm. Here she performs excerpts of 12 compositions by Chopin, and I quote from the YouTube video description, while wearing different sexy dresses and shoes. You also are asked to vote for your favorite one, even if it's not clear what exactly has to be voted for. Favorite dress, shoes, composition, or how it would actually make the most sense about the most successful combination of the three mediatic levels. One also sees a description of the project, in each case composition plus description of the dress and shoes. It is also indicated when the new combination starts in terms of minutes. You will notice that not only solo piano pieces are offered, but even parts from the two completed piano concertos, and that actually only more or less shorter fragments of the compositions are played. So I would like to play or scroll a little bit of the example. It will. We need audio, I think. Get to the presentation? That one? This? Okay. Thank you. So you saw more or less how the examples works. And so one of the questions which arises, how the whole thing happened. So did she create the concept and put it online, or did someone create fragments from other videos of her and recombine them? So is this a representation or a self-portrayal? Both of them. So this question cannot be clearly answered because first, there are hardly any performances of whole pieces on YouTube played by her and also on other platforms. And second, because there are also not those fragments that have been compiled here. So there is actually an official channel of Lola Stanova on YouTube, but this compilation and no parts of it cannot be found there. The Chopin project, however, is posted on the YouTube channel called Piano and High Heels with the note to subscribe to Astanova's official channel. So a certain closeness to Astanova seems to be given in the postings of the channel's moderator. But I can't say more about it, and I don't think this being of such importance. You could see that all shots in the video were taken at the same place. I assume her apartment. There are also other fragments online from this location, but you can also see that the camera is always placed differently. So I suppose she made the videos herself, but who cares? And remarkably, you never see her face. On the contrary, it is really crucial for me to reflect about the ontological dimension this performance addresses. It is something arbitrary, or is this a concept somehow only possible to exist in this kind of media platform? And turning back to the title of my speech, what kind of persona is acting in the example? In his essay, Live from Cyberspace, Performance on the internet, Outlander already posed the question about the ontology of performance on the internet in 2002, asking if performance finds new spaces on the internet and which kind of spaces this might be. So what kind of context do we see in our example? Where, how, and why does this performance happen? Certainly not as a medium to convey objects in the sense of musical texts or musical works. It seems to me that here the compositions play no role, or if only as a subordinate one. With Outlander, quote, "To be a musician is to perform an identity in a social realm. What musicians perform first and foremost is not music, but their own identities as musicians, their musical persona," quote end. This is particularly clear in this video. Nevertheless, the question of how far this kind of performance differs from a traditional live performance remains unanswered. But somehow completely different contexts of meanings are suggested and constructed. I can't really give answers, but I can tell you why this example, which as a matter of fact is a bit trivial and not really good music, but I am not here as a music critic today, has occupied me so much, because I couldn't stop to think if the performance I'm dealing with is translatable outside the digital realm, and if yes, how? An essential level of this example is even the reception one. So around 750,000 loadings since January 2017, likes, dislikes, comments. So the visual information certainly leads to a different perception of the media level of music. This is nothing unusual in itself. It is in a concert, in a foreplay, in a video clip as well. And I have already hinted before, I believe that she films herself playing at home, and a lot of instrument players do this on YouTube, but this doesn't mean that she is an amateur wannabe artist putting her videos online. On the contrary. Lola Stanova hosts several digital spaces. Her Instagram page counts about 940,000 subscribers. Her YouTube channel has more than 190,000 followers. A YouTube video with Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata in a transcription for piano and cello played by Stefan Hauser brought it to over 39 million clicks. So over 720,000 people like and follow her Facebook page. Her Twitter page has only 1,100 followers and has not been updated since July 2019, probably because Twitter has a different media quality. And a YouTube channel named Lola Stanova Fan Club even exists, and on her own page you can also buy merchandising products. So I think we are clearly moving more in the space of influencer than of classical musicians. In the recently published essay, Technologies of the Musical Selfie, Suman Gopinath and Jason Staniek present a theory of musical selfie based on Foucault, Denora, and the now frequent practice of photographic selfie. Even if an essential component of the musical selfie, the face as a possibility and the potential of the sonorous output, is missing in my example, some things could be interpreted in this direction. So the digital self, it as the persona, is defined in connection with other digital creatures and in a strong connection to basic features of digital culture. For example, digital sharing, algocracy, surveillance, and so forth. These selfies trigger not only musical perception. Once again, this is nothing new in itself, but the immediacy of the interaction, its speed, its uncensored appearance makes it all a little different. In this newly emerging discourse, the audience helps to define the persona. What is new in a digital culture, paraphrasing from Paul Sandson's essay listed in the slide, is the degree to which the traditional paradigm of liveness, the way a performance can be defined, can be ripped apart, fragmented, and reconstructed according to the characteristic of digital technologies. In a cultural environment characterized and increasingly feeling comfortable with the logic of fragmentation, permutation, and collage, more and more recipients appreciate this erosion of the traditional performance paradigma. And therefore, artists are consciously beginning to experiment with these new concepts of liveness. They are traditional artists, but they make themselves into virtual artists. In Astanova's case, this is also reflected in her production. So probably it's too small, so you cannot see it, but in the listing of the platform Discogs, you can see that her music or her interpretations only exist in the digital spaces. So there are no CDs, no vinyl, only digital files. And the before-mentioned fragmentarity of her examples leads to strange interpretations. I quote, "She only posts excerpts," writes Leah Frost in a commentary to a fragment of the fourth Chopin ballade. And you can also read her way of arguing on the slide. I quote, "The excerpt that she does play are very fleshy and with lack of emotion. She probably doesn't record or learn full pieces because she does not play the slower, more emotional parts well at all judging from her experts of the ballads," quote end. So this argumentation is bizarre, but fits well in the whole discourse. But I believe there can be much more behind this concept of the fragmentarity. In this article, Outlander discusses the historicity of the concept of liveness. The idea of what counts as life experience naturally changes in conjunction with technological development. By referring to Nick Couldry, he also describes two new forms of liveness, namely online liveness and group liveness. These are closely linked because the experience of liveness is not limited to specific performer-audience interactions, but refer to a sense of always being connected to other people, of continuous, technologically mediated temporal co-presence with other known and unknown, quote end. So the recipients of the Chopin project express themselves interactively about the performance offered. By interacting with the machine, they have an illusion of feedback. And this may suggest the idea of a subjective encounter with the persona in the sense of liveness. Does Lola Stanova express herself about this in one of her digital presences? In an interview in 2009, so actually more than 10 years ago, Derek asks, "How has the internet changed life for the concert artist today? More specifically, how has YouTube, with its extraordinary library of music and musicians, changed the concert artist's life today?" And Lola's answer, "I think it's fair to say that the internet has changed not only the lives of individual artists, but the entire entertainment and media landscapes. It's even a bit overwhelming to think that of all the opportunities that the internet tools have opened for the arts, education, entertainment, and cultural exchange. You are right, of course, about YouTube being a singular library of material, but there is much more to it than that. It is an amazing way to communicate with the audience directly, without intermediaries and outside the sometimes intimidating atmosphere of a concert hall. It allows for an entirely different relationship between the artist and the listener, and for a much closer, much more personal experience." Maybe this personal experience is something oxymorical, an oxymorical relationship between artists and audiences. Audiences which are in our case the followers, the trolls, the likers, the dislikers, but we are, as scientists, also an audience today. And oxymorical because this relation wants to be personal in virtuality and vice versa. And this short-circuit situation for me as a musicologist and music lover is a really stimulating one. So thank you for your attention, and I look forward to a stimulating discussion.
Thank you so very much, Yuri Giannini, for this so rich and challenging talk that, among other questions, inquires the new modes of presentation and appearance and performance in our cyber landscapes. There are lots of questions that you brought us. I'm sure that there are questions among the audience. I think João is going to begin our debate.
I will. Thank you. Yuri, can you just stop your screen share, please?
What should I do?
In the red button,
This
please.
one?
The screen sharing?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, thank you so much, Yuri, for a wonderful presentation. And I also worked on Lola Astanova last year in the context of gender and music. And since you're talking specifically about this idea of performer persona, and I mean, there's one thing that she as an artist, and she basically uses Instagram, and she produces a specific type of videos with a specific type of audience, without ever denying her artistry and skill. But then you have the other part of the audience that is also a producer, and then people like, we don't know who, produce those type of channels like Piano in High Heels, where she is basically sexualized and used for voting, basically. So how do you see when this fine line between users and producers, while negotiating the idea of a persona, of a performer, even though the performer already have their own space of production and online diffusion of what they do. So they have their audience in a passive way, then we have the active audience that also produce content based on the content the performer already produces. So how do you see this phenomenon and this evolution from the past decade, and how YouTube also played this role?
Okay, so I think this case is a bit, because the platform like Piano in High Heels is actually, there are only 7 or 8 videos on it, so it's not so important, and by chance I found this video there. And sorry? The channel? You think so? Okay, I don't know. It's difficult because in this case, the way she represents herself and the way she is represented in this platform is more or less, let's say, the same strategy. So I don't know if you can say that his persona is used in another kind of platform, because actually this is more or less the way she do the self-presentation. And so if I understood your question right.
I'm actually more focusing on the role that users have, not only regarding to her specifically and the production, but what you're talking about in performers and personas, and how users become producers when they're also negotiating their contents.
Okay. Actually, when we discussed this example in Vienna in our lectures, this was labeled as fetish. Yes, and therefore it's difficult now to abstract and say, okay, what could this be the significance for musicological kind of questions? So I don't know. For me, the interesting case is I noticed, yes, for example, comparing now to the example of the case study before, yes, I think in the case of Lola Astanova, so you cannot state it for sure, but I feel the guys writing the comments are older people. And in the former case, it seems to me there were more younger people, yes? And I think there are not really people looking this for searching answer concerning the music, because you don't really listen to music in these cases. You listen to fragments and you see something. So you have another product, which is not music. So you don't listen to Chopin work, but you see another, let's say, a performance of something. Therefore, it's hard to say. And then you have guys writing, I am like a professional pianist and teaching since 30 years, and this is the most beautiful interpretation of Chopin ever heard. And I ask myself, how can it be? Yeah? What's going on? So this is for me the interesting question. But I cannot, I think I'm not ready yet to give an answer, and maybe it will last a couple of years more for everybody, I think.
I think it's a really very interesting question. The dimension that is produced by the performer and eventually his or her team, and the complementary products or ideas or videos and comments that are produced by a whole community that also produces and reproduces and translates sometimes the persona that is showed, is presented by Lola or by other composer. I am thinking, for instance, as you mentioned, the performers that doesn't exist, or the composers, but in fact they are created by a team or by some people that built a character, and the rest is done by the community, the commentaries, the suppositions, the filters. It is very interesting because it's so, in this time, it's very difficult to decode every aspect of this network of meanings and addiction of meanings and subtraction, and we feel sometimes you use very much the concept of illusion. I think we feel very much the idea of illusion sometimes when we deal with this landscape, because we never know, and sometimes we don't care if there is a real person, if Lola Asanova creates or produces an idea or a character or not. But as you said it, and so very well, perhaps her public is only interested in listening to fragments and analyzing her body. That's interesting. That's another niche, another center of interest that there was not in our concerns 10 or 20 years ago. It's really very recent. I don't know if you would like to comment.
Yes, I think for me this idea of fragment is in the foreground, because it's a kind of new aesthetical approach to phenomena, because this is another example, but I saw it in the train. Yes, in the train there is like a television for the kids, and they play like cartoons, but they always play fragment of cartoons, like 1 minute and the next 1 minute, the next 1 minute, and so on. This is something similar, in my opinion. And this is also a bit the idea of of selfie, as I told. So you make a selfie and put it online. Everybody's going to comment it and give significance to it. So the same is in this case with the music, or with the pictures, with the moving pictures, with still pictures and so on.
Absolutely. It's a question of intermediality and intertextuality, and we cannot expect to have only meaning and only perception of the thing, because each one of us can really have his own or her own perspective. It's very interesting. And John, have here a question to you. You had mentioned this, but is her image being propagated as valuable, or her musical prowess? If I have listened to her music, and she does seem to sensationalize intimate music and music in general. Could she be considered a figure that is de-intellectualizing classical music, training the ear to love classical music from a more accessible angle?
It's hard to say, because you have, actually, there is only one complete performance of her online, which is Gershwin Rhapsody in Blue. And this is also the one, so researching it was also the only live performance I found she already made. She went in tournée with Rhapsody in Blue. And then you have this fragment. So I don't know if you can say these fragments are de-intellectualizing classical music, or only, no idea, schizophrenic way of showing herself as player of classical music. So there are a lot of artists trying to do let's say, this de-intellectualization of classical music, and but they also let's say, appear as traditional musicians like Zhuzha Wang or Lang Lang and so on and so on. Before I mentioned Bernstein also acted in this way, but she does it on a completely different way, and I'm not sure you can interpret it as de-intellectualizing. I think it's something different.
But John Vandenberg points out an also very interesting question. Goes back, training the mind to only be able to listen to short fragments, not pieces, goes back to attention span and conscious listening for the right reasons. I think it's very interesting, that question of we being trained nowadays to very short moments of attention, of consciousness, and more and more we deal with very short fragments and very rapid plans and explosions, and everything is short and condensed. And I think this question is interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. This is one way of interpreting it. But it's interesting because she takes pieces which are per se short. For example, Chopin Etude are not so long. So it's I think the attention span could, the mind could reach an attention of 2, 3, 4 minutes. But she plays like 40 seconds. So that's maybe one step more. But sure, the videos are, let's say, affiliate with our idea of perception and aesthetic of fragments,
it's a time of a commercial. It's interesting, more or less. So we have a commercial from 30 seconds, and after we are going to see a small piece of Lola Astanova. We don't care very much if it's the real thing or if it is staged, because we require to be entertained, and we feel that the world is too too strong, too lourd, pesado for us. So we need to escape. We need to be free and to be entertained. Lipovetsky and so many other theoreticians talk very much about this idea of entertainment, as you also mentioned. And we can also go back to Adorno. So Adorno, 100 years ago, talked precisely about fragments. He was very, very worried and completely angry on the discography and on the fact that now that was propagated only one area and not the opera. So he was angry, he was revolted, and I think we are in the Adorno era, 100 years ago, in the great explosion of what he previewed. What do you think?
Yes, sure.
Sorry, could I expand?
There was a question, I think.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something about it's being promoted as intellectual. No, now I've completely forgot. But you mentioned if it was intellectual or not. But could you also look at it as promoting this idea of status more than?
No, the question was if she's trying to de-intellectualize. So make it
exactly.
less intellectual.
Yeah. So she's trying to de-intellectualize whilst selling the idea of classical music as something high status, and it sort of does it tie with also with the way she presents herself. You know, these gala dresses, the grand piano, kind of. Do you think that plays a role?
Again, I didn't.
So it. Well, it's de-intellectualizing while still maintaining classical music, or as we could call it, sell it, because we call it as almost a commercial, sell classical music as something high status. And you mentioned fetishize, so fetishizing music, classical music as something high status, that is yet, whilst being high status, is accessible. Do you think that's a valid?
But I don't think she sells classical music. She sells her performances, because she has no CDs to sell. She sells like caps, she sells T-shirts, and she sells performances. So actually, you don't have her being at concerts. And you have, for example, she played like 3-4 months ago. There was like a tennis tournament in Serbia or in Croatia, because she's a friend of the tennis player. What's his name? Djokovic, yes? So the number one. And so there is also a video on YouTube where they play together piano, and she played there in this tournament. And then she played, I don't know, with Bocelli. They made something for lockdown. So it's this kind of
you mean it's never framed in a classical sense?
So she doesn't sell a LP or a CD with Chopin music. She sells a new format, which is this we are speaking about. This kind of fragments of a mixture, a multimedia mixture of music and clothes, herself, and reaction of people, making this possible to happen.
So she's but I still get the feeling that she's using classical music, but a very specific part of it, right? The fact that it's classical music and it's not film music, for example. Well, I suppose sometimes it might be.
There are also videos of her playing film music, and there there is
Okay.
everything. But she started with Chopin.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I think at the moment she also composed own songs and sing them. But it's always a kind of installation, like the piano on the beach and the blue piano. It's always like a kind of digital multimedia, I would say.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you so very much for your fascinating talk and for this so enriching debate. The organization is telling me that we must close now because there is time to lunch and you have a strong program in the afternoon, you and me. So thank you so much for this precious moment. And I will give word to the organization. I don't know if they have some other information to give you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your talk.
Thank you for sharing.
So just some quick notes. We're going to finish now to have lunch, and we're back at 2:30. We're going to keep the Zoom working, so if you want to stay and chat and have a drink for those who are online. And we'll be back here 10 minutes before, so 2:20 to have everything ready, and then we'll continue the panels in the afternoon. So thank you, and have a good lunch, and be right back.